Could we see multiple first rounders at the linebacker position in the 2024 NFL draft class? I'm breaking down the top 5 linebackers in the class on today's Renner Ranks.
This is Renner Ranks, the ultimate NFL ranking show. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Renner Ranks, your go-to daily ranks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a special thank you to all the everydayers out there for making Renner Ranks your first listen. I, of course, am your host, Mike Renner, NFL draft analyst for The Messenger. And today's podcast is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. As I said at the top, linebackers today. We've been going through the position rankings, top 5s at every position. If you haven't checked out the ones prior to this, we've done everything but safety up until this point. So we'll get to that later this week. But today, linebackers. And as I've been doing here on the solo pod rankings, I'm going to walk you through kind of how I scout linebackers. And it ain't easy, man. I mean, just look at the NFL's track record drafting linebackers highly of late. Just go through the first rounders here, the last 6 drafts. 2023, you had Jack Campbell. He hasn't even started right away for the Detroit Lions early on in his career. Obviously not giving up on him, but just saying he's not even, hitting the ground running like you might expect a first round linebacker to. 2022, you had Quay Walker, Devin Lloyd. I think Devin Lloyd's had a nice little second year for him. Quay Walker's still kind of inconsistent. 2021, Zaven Collins, Jamin Davis. Enough said there. 2020, Isaiah Simmons, Kenneth Murray, Jordan Brooks, Patrick Queen. 2019, Devin White, Devin Bush. 2018, Roquan Smith, Tremaine Edmonds, Leighton Vander Esch, Rashaan Evans. Not great, right? If you're compared to a lot of other positions around the NFL, that is not a good track record of drafting guys highly. And why is that? To me, it's because linebacker is the most demanding position outside of quarterback in the NFL in terms of the skill set necessary to play it. Basically, anything that anyone else does on the defensive side of the ball, linebacker at times may have to do, right? You have to take on blocks. You have to cover tight ends. You have to cover slot receivers. You have to go sideline to sideline in the run game. You have to tackle running backs. They can be big. They can be 240-pound running backs. They can be 180-pound running backs that run 4.3s. You have to read backfield action. You have to read blocking action. You have to take deep drops when it's in zone coverage. You have to be able to blitz. So pretty much, like I said, any aspect of football on defense side of the ball, you have to be able to do. And we see the NFL kind of trend towards, when I read off that list, they trend towards athletes highly. I mean, that's what they do at every position. But they're drafting a lot of guys who aren't necessarily good at football yet, don't necessarily have the read and react part of the position down before they're getting drafted. They're just drafting guys who run fast. And so all of those guys, I think the slowest ones on that list, Jack Campbell went 4.65. Leighton Vander Esch went 4.65. Zaven Collins went 4.66 in the 40s. So you're going 4.66 or faster to be a first rounder. And then even the guys who were mid 4.6s, I mean, they were all, Jack Campbell's the lightest of those guys I mentioned, 249 pounds. They're all like 250 plus. So if you're not a jumbo off-ball linebacker, you better run the mid to low 4.5s to get drafted highly. And that's just the position what it's become, is everyone wants guys that can cover ground more accurately probably there. Obviously, you want guys that can cover in terms of like one-on-one versus tight ends, one-on-one versus wide receivers. Easier said than done. You just want guys who can cover and make up ground at the linebacker position, because that's what it is. You are kind of consistently behind what the offense is doing. You're going to have ways to make up for that fact that the offense kind of dictates terms in the NFL, especially in the running game nowadays with how diverse teams are getting. You're not seeing teams run inside zone 50% of the time like Adam Gase used to back in the day for the Chicago Bears. These offenses are way more creative. So you have to either be an elitely quick processor, which is most of the guys who turn out to be high-end linebackers at the NFL, or a guy with high-end physical tools. So with that in mind, let us get to the top 5 in this linebacker class. And I think this is a good class. Going into the year, I wasn't super high on it. I thought there was one guy I liked as a first rounder, maybe only a couple guys I thought could even be second rounders. though a lot of guys have had good seasons, a lot of breakout players. We're going to get to them. A couple guys in this top 5 that I think are breakout players. And then even more outside this top 5 that I think are probably day 2 guys in my eyes. So I think it's a solid class, maybe not anything special. And maybe not like I think 2 years ago, the class that had a bunch of day 2 guys was that the 2022 NFL draft. I thought was super deep. I don't think this one's especially deep, but I do think there are still a lot of starters to go around and probably guys who can start early on in the NFL. So at number 5, I have Oklahoma linebacker Danny Stutzman. He's a third-year guy, 6'4", 241 pounds, kind of a breakout year in his second year as a starter at middle linebacker for Oklahoma. Now, he could even return to school because I think he has the tools to go higher. 6'4", 241, he has kind of the prototypical skill set everyone's looking for, size, sort of pedigree that everyone's looking for at the NFL. To me, he's very Jack Campbell-esque in that maybe he doesn't do anything super elite, but I don't think there's any aspect of the position that he's deficient in. He can blitz, he can drop, he can run sideline to sideline, he can tackle. 42 defensive stops this year, only 9 missed tackles on 100 tackle attempts. I just think he's all around a super solid linebacker. And again, diverse in the skill set he can run. You see him go out and cover the slot there in the Oklahoma defense. You see him come downhill and blitz. You see him take on blocks already. Has the long frame to be a do-it-all type of every down linebacker at the next level. I don't think he plays quite as quickly in terms of read and react as some of these other guys on this list, but he's also younger than some of these other guys on this list. And that's why I mentioned, if he did come back to school, like Jack Campbell was a senior coming out of Iowa before he ended up being a first rounder. If he did that, I think he could push his way into the first round with a big season. That's the type of athlete we're dealing with here in Danny Stutzman, but we shall see. I still think if he did come out, probably a top 75 player. I think all 5 of these guys that I'm going to mention are going to end up at minimum top 100 players on my draft board. I think all going to end up being top 75 players, though, when all is said and done. All right, let's move on to number 4 here, where I have NC State linebacker Peyton Wilson. This one's a unique sort of skill set, Peyton Wilson here. I'll just get right into it. He's 6'4", 238. He looks like a tight end from a build perspective in how he moves on a football field. And that's a good skill set to have when you're a guy who's going to be tasked with defending tight ends at the next level. So I think he's going to be able to do that extremely well. The knocks on Wilson, though, 2 major knee injuries over the course of his career, but those were a long time ago. One was in high school. One was his freshman year of college, but then a lot of shoulder injuries since then. Has injured both shoulders, one multiple times. And that's the more worrisome thing for me because that was back in 2021, his latest one, because of the way he tackles. He has a lot of clothesline tackles on tape. Go search Peyton Wilson clothesline on Twitter right now. You'll see like a half dozen of him just taking guys out with one arm, which when you have reconstructed shoulders, probably isn't the best way to tackle, but I mean, he's darn good at it. Like, he is a powerful dude. His tape this year, though, of all the linebackers in college football, he has the best tape of anyone in college football this season, for my money. He's been unbelievable this year. He has 60 defensive stops, the most of any Power 5 linebacker. So Peyton Wilson, like the skill set, everything is there. This guy could be a true high-end difference maker at the next level. Doesn't miss tackles. Only 6 missed tackles on 118 attempts this year. He reminds me a lot of like Derek Johnson. Now, maybe I didn't watch Derek Johnson coming out of Texas, but Derek Johnson in the NFL in that he's just big, long, fast, and violent. That is how Peyton Wilson plays the game. If he didn't have any of those injury concerns, and if he wasn't, he's a 6-year guy, so came in 2018 class, those injuries have kind of really pushed back his sort of timeline getting to the NFL. He didn't have those knocks against him, he'd be number 1 on this list. If this was just like a true junior and this was his breakout year, this guy would be a first-round pick, slam dunk. There's no debate about it. But with all those things kind of going against him, dropped him down a little bit on this. Now, if he goes to Senior Bowl and balls out, like we can change that tune. He can get bumped up boards depending on how his medicals and whatnot come back. But keeping him at number 4 for now because I like the top 3 guys on this list. But Peyton Wilson's tape, if you haven't seen this guy play, is a ton of fun to watch. I think he might run sub 4.5 as well. You watch him track down wide receivers from behind on tape at times there at NC State. Super high effort dude. Truly not a lot to not like about his tape this year. It really is just the injury concerns with him. Can he stay healthy? That's been the case for him over the course of his career up to this point. All right, before we get to the top 3 here, today's podcast is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show you the total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without any hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It is the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's again, LOCKDOWN NFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Today's podcast is also brought to you by BetterHelp. This time of year can be a lot, and it's natural to feel some sadness or anxiety about it. But adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings. Therapy can be a bright spot amid all the stress and change. Something to look forward to and to make you feel grounded and to give you the tools to manage everything going on. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist. And switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today for 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. All right, on to the number 3 linebacker in this draft class. And it is Junior Colson out of Michigan, who just so happens to be a junior himself. He's 6'3", 247 pounds. One of 2 off-ball linebackers I actually like for Michigan. Michael Barrett is another who may very well make himself a day 2 pick. But Junior Colson, the younger of the 2, the more steady of the 2. I'm amazed watching his game how disciplined he is for only a true junior. His third year as a starter. This guy's been starting ever since his true freshman year at Michigan. And it shows, man. He came into Michigan and is just a guy who knows how to play the game of football. Now, he's probably the worst athlete of anyone we're going to mention on this list. And now at 6'3", 247, it's not as big a deal, right? That size is more, you're going to be a traditional Mike or strong side linebacker at the NFL level. He's going to be playing between the tackles. Certain schemes aren't going to ask him to do much more in coverage than tight ends and running backs out of the backfield, right? When you're that type of linebacker. To me, it reminds me a lot of a guy like Logan Wilson. And that he's just unbelievably steady, not going to be in missing assignments, not going to be in the wrong position, maybe not going to go above and beyond, but then also not going to miss tackles. He's only missed 2 tackles on 69 tackle attempts this year. Maybe, again, with the athletic tools being just okay, I would probably expect him to run somewhere in the high 4.6s in the 40-yard dash. That's not a death knell by any means to his prospect at the next level. But it just means he's not going to be like a top 50 pick, right? You're probably, with that type of testing, teams are just going to look elsewhere super highly in the draft. But I think once you get this guy in the fold, you're not going to complain about him ever. He's just not going to be a guy that you are worried about, not going to be a guy that you are looking to replace anytime soon. So that still has a ton of value to me in the NFL, especially when you need your linebackers to be good against the run. You need them not missing assignments when you have a ton of light boxes and they have to cover multiple gaps. I think Colson's a guy that can very easily do that in the running game at the next level. So I'm a big fan of his. Now, if you want to draft some of these guys I've said below higher than him because they have better athletic tools, by all means. But I just think you're getting a darn good football player in Junior Colson should he come out. Obviously, again, third-year player. We'll see if he does declare. But I'm a big fan of this game. I think you're just one of the highest floor linebackers in this draft class. All right, on to number 2, where I have Edgerrin Cooper from Texas A&M, one of the biggest breakout players in all of college football this season. He's a fourth-year guy, second year as a starter, 6'3", 230 pounds, super long and lanky. From like a build perspective, reminds me a lot of Fred Warner. So Fred Warner was 6'3", 238 coming out, so just a little bit bigger, but 32-inch arms, long, can shut down windows over the middle of the football field. Everyone wants length at the linebacker position. Everyone wants those guys. It's how Tremaine Edmonds goes in the first round, despite somewhat lackluster tape coming out of Virginia Tech, is because long and fast can make up for a lot of mistakes once you get to the league. So that's Edgerrin Cooper this season. Like I said, breakout. He's PFF's currently highest graded linebacker in college football. 51 defensive stops. I mentioned Peyton Wilson had 60. Danny Stutzman, 42. 51 for Edgerrin Cooper. Heck of an athlete, man. Explosive linearly, but then also can change directions very fluidly. Now, he still can get a little out of control at times. Still some over pursuits and some bad tackling angles on tape. That was really a bigger issue back in 2022. That was probably why he wasn't considered necessarily a top prospect, was you saw that a lot on his tape in his first year as starter. But you love that he's sort of fixing those mistakes, getting better as his career has gone on. I'm a big fan of his game. He could be a first-round linebacker. After what he put on tape this year, after what he's probably going to do from a testing perspective at the combine, his pro day, this is a guy that could go round 1. Because that's what they look like, right? They look like his measurable, whether 6'3", 230 with probably going to be fairly long arms, and his testing, which is probably going to be, I would guesstimate, somewhere in the low 4.5s, and just probably going to be a high-end all-around athletic profile for him. So a lot to like about Edgerrin Cooper. And again, a top 50 player in this draft at worst, I think, at this point in time. All right, before we get to the number 1 on this list, today's podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That is $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, the number 1 linebacker in the 2024 NFL draft class, a guy that I'm somewhat unreasonably high on. It is Clemson's Barrett Carter. On to recap your top 5. Oklahoma, Danny Stutzman at number 5. At number 4, Peyton Wilson from NC State. Number 3, Junior Colson from Michigan. Number 2, Edgerrin Cooper from Texas A&M. And then at number 1, Barrett Carter from Clemson. Third-year guy, second year as a starter, 6'1", 230 pounds, very Patrick Queen-esque in terms of what you're getting from an athlete perspective. And just size, build, how he plays the game. The guy has elite movement skills, man. I mean, he is so fluid. And truthfully, I thought his tape was better last year when he was playing more slot in Clemson's defense. Has moved more to traditional off-ball, between the tackles, more role this year for Clemson. And it's not going to be a strong suit. Taking on blocks at 6'1", 230 is never going to be great, but he's so twitched up, so fluid, so gifted athletically that he can consistently play around blocks if he wants, even at the NFL level. Like, that's how easy this guy gets, just moving from a standstill. It's really impressive to watch. He's only allowed 13 catches all season long. Really a guy that he can guard a slot wide receiver if you want him to. I mean, at 6'1", 230, he has better movement skills than some cornerback prospects. He will test out better than guys, in my opinion, than guys who were drafted at cornerback this year. That's just how special this guy is as a mover. And that's what everyone wants, right? And he already sees the game well. This isn't an Isaiah Simmons situation where you're projecting him to a brand new role what's it going to be? You're just drafting a high-end athlete and trying to teach him how to play the game. No, he knows how to play linebacker at a really high level already. I am very impressed with his read and react ability, how quickly he can see and diagnose things. And then once he does, he gets there in a hurry, man. So Clemson's got a pretty darn good off-ball linebacker tandem, him, Jeremiah Trotter as well. Both should be drafted fairly highly. Barrett Carter, I think I'm going to have a first-round grade on him. Now, I need to really dive into the minutia of this year's tape a little bit more to see, why the production quite hasn't been there like it was when he played the slot. What kind of role would he be best at filling the next level? Like, I have an idea of it, but I need to probably drill it down just a little bit better. But as it stands right now, man, that guy is just such a freak athlete, sees the game so well. I just don't see him failing at the next level, I don't think. I think that's a guy that you're going to want because of how many different plays he can make in coverage versus the run, tracking down wide runs. Everyone's going faster at the running back position, trying to get these guys on the edge more and more. Derek Carr is the perfect guy to shut those down. So big fan of his game. Like I said, him and Edgerrin Cooper, I can see having, depending on what you covet, one over the other in terms of linebacker one right now. I think both could end up being first rounders. Both at worst, I'd say, are top 50 picks. I'd be surprised if either is not. So it's a pretty good, when you have a couple guys in that range, I think it's a pretty solid linebacker class. A few other guys I wanted to give a shout out to in this linebacker class. Jeremiah Trotter, like I mentioned, from Clemson. He's going to be this year's Ivan Pace. The guy does not have a big frame, going to be 6 foot or maybe a little bit under 6 foot, shorter arms. We'll see how the NFL ends up valuing that, with obviously the fact that Ivan Pace Jr. has been an impact player for the Minnesota Vikings as UDFA right away. See if maybe they change their tune on that and draft him a little bit higher than, not drafted at all. So fan of his game, fan of Michael Barrett's game, who I mentioned earlier, the Michigan linebacker. The guy plays the position violently. He does not shy away from contact. He's another guy who's only 6 foot tall, but my Lord, when he comes downhill, he will hit you. Maybe the most violent linebacker in the entire draft class this season. I like Cedric Gray from North Carolina. I think he's just an all-around solid guy. Would have made this list if he was a little bit better of a tackler. Still has some issues in that regard, but I think he's a modern coverage-first type of linebacker. And then Trevin Wallace from Kentucky is kind of the wild card in this draft class. He's going to go to the combine, absolutely light it up, prototypical size as well. I believe he's like 6'4", in the 240s. Very much a Jamin Davis-esque, former other Kentucky linebacker sort of draft profile where, yeah, the on-field performance isn't there, but you can't teach what he brings to the table athletically. So we'll see how the NFL ends up coveting him. But I do think there's more than enough to work with that. If the light switch flips on with him, you're getting something special. So those four I like as well. Could all be day 2 picks as along with the top 5 that I mentioned there. And there you have it. There's your linebacker class. So now the week coming up here, we have Austin Gale on tomorrow, going to rank what we're most thankful for in the game of football prior to, obviously, Thanksgiving, where there's not going to be a show. And then Friday is going to be safeties. Try to just run through the rest of these positional rankings, and then we can get to more NFL and more higher level draft stuff next week. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, wherever you get podcasts, on YouTube, wherever. We'll be back again tomorrow with the Ringers, Austin Gale. Until then, take it easy.